Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Blip Pod. I am Nolan.
And I am Joey.
And today we will be giving our thoughts, opinions, and review of the first two episodes of WandaVision. This, dude, over five...
Cue 60s sitcom theme music.
Yeah. Joey and Nolan were making a podcast. They sat in the room one day.
And then they never came out because the world exploded, and luckily they were in a basement recording and survived.
I like the idea. We should go into that assumption from now on, is that we're making a podcast not only for no one, but with no potential of anyone ever being there.
Exactly.
It's day 65 since the incident, and everyone is dead.
And we're still recording a podcast that no one's ever going to listen to.
Be it.
That's why no one listens to our podcast.
That's why. Everyone's dead. I knew it. But seriously, we'll be talking about the first two episodes of WandaVision. So without further ado, Joey, let's get right into it.
Ta-da!
Okay, so it's the first bit of Marvel content we've had in, like, I think it's over 500 days, so it's about a year and a half. Honestly, this is a good, let me get this off the, I liked these episodes and loved where it was going, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I feel the exact same way. I feel like I should just say, just to start off saying to people listening, I don't know if you're one of these people or not, but I know some people are saying, like, oh, I really didn't like these episodes, they're boring, nothing happened, but that's the point. It's not a movie, so it's not your typical MCU where this is our first TV show. It's not a movie where something crazy and drastic has to happen. That's what we're used to in the MCU, but now this is a TV show kind of based off the style of sitcoms and TV shows, and it's supposed to be weird and something completely new, so I'm okay with the fact that nothing crazy happened within these first two episodes. It's a 9-episode series, and it needs to lead up to it. You had little bits within these first two episodes that are teasing big things and crazy stuff to happen. So just be patient. Like, wait for it's gonna happen. It has to lead up to it. It can't just be right away. It wouldn't be a TV show if they're gonna have crazy stuff happen right away. It has to take its time.
And I think you're right. And what people got to remember is not only is this not a movie, but for lack of, it's not really a TV show in its usual sense either. And I've mentioned this a lot to you, and I'm going to say it now. This most closely resembles, to me, a comic book. Where issue 1, like the first issue, you have a minor villain, teases for a bigger thing. Issue 2, you know what, they have a run. Issue 2, the villain continues sort of deal. Not a lot happens, but when you read it together, it's a fantastic story. I think that's what they're going for. I think this is basically, they're trying to recreate a comic book while at the same time capturing that 50s and 60s charm and an MCU kind of build-up. It's just got a lot of things going for it right now. I think production quality-wise, this is amazing. I know if you've seen behind the scenes, how they film this, the attention to detail put into, like, masterfully recreating this is stunning, is amazing. They filmed episode 1 and most of episode 2 in front of a live studio audience, who apparently had to sign non-disclosure agreements that were like, if you say anything, we will kill you. I saw someone...
Imagine being one of those people.
Imagine being one of those people where it always strikes me as crazy. So a lot of the second episode couldn't have really been in front of a live studio audience for the most part, some of it. So I'm like, okay, imagine 2 years ago, you basically get to watch almost like a compilation of YouTube clips about WandaVision, and then they're like, go home and don't say anything for 2 years. I would be so fascinated to see what it turns out to be. Like, if I was one of those people, I'd be like, what did it actually turn out to? But,
yeah, exactly.
Okay, we'll break this down into... So, our initial thoughts, this is really good. We love where this is going. And we'll talk about... Okay, now we'll get into episode 1 in particular. Episode 1. I think episode 1 People say not a lot happens in this episode. Yes, and I think that's very deliberate. I've heard a lot of people say this, and I totally agree. I think episode 1 was just to ease people into the fact that we went from kind of a very dark storyline with Wanda and Vision to this flip comedy thing. Weird.
Hey, they got their perfect life that they always wanted.
Yeah, exactly. So I think episode 1, the reason they didn't put a lot of story into it and it was more character based and weird sitcom based was I think they want to ease the audience into the idea that these characters are in this world now. They're in this weird 50s, 60s sitcom sort of thing. Okay, let's move on from here. Which is why I think at the end of episode 2, in episode 2, we start to get the little sprinkles of what's to come because they're like, okay, you've either bought into this idea or you haven't. Let's go forward. I think there's some great comedy, specifically in the second episode, but we'll get to that later. Some good comedy in the first episode. I like the very situational comedy of the heart. Do you know what day it is, Vision? Oh, of course I do, my love. I'm impossible of forgetting. In fact, I'm impossible of even exaggerating. I thought that was funny. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you noticed this, but Paul Bettany is, of course, British and has a British accent, and he just goes, my wife is European, and they go, oh, Europeans. I'm like, you're European! But it's that weird 50s like sitcom mentality of, it doesn't matter, so we're not going to bring attention to it.
Plus, it also goes into the fact of the storyline for the MCU, how, they're saying, they can't remember. It's like, jokes and laugh like a normal sitcom. They forget something. It's a dinner date with your boss. Like, how that they forgot. But actually, that's another thing for the plot, how they can't remember anything from their past. They can't remember scheduling that because, like, it's not their real lives. So it also plays in the fact of, like, the sitcom jokes, but also in the fact of there's an actual storyline outside of the sitcom happening.
This reminds me, I will have to say off the bat, we haven't said anything yet, but I do want to say spoilers. Okay, this will be a spoiler. I'm assuming you watched it if you're listening to this, but definitely spoilers. First of all, let's get this off our place. Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen, particularly in terms of storyline and development, Elizabeth Olsen, but in terms of comedy, Paul Bettany, they're so good in this show. I'm so glad they got a longer form to kind of show off their characters and their acting abilities. Excuse me, in the first episode, I totally believe that they were 50s. Paul Bettany, in the second episode, sells this kind of wacky comedy thing, whereas Elizabeth Olsen kind of sells that kind of weird, nervous 60s housewife sort of deal. It's so good.
Well, yeah, playing off of that, too, I'm like a big fan of the old, like 50s to 90s sitcom shows. Like, I actually enjoy those a lot. I'm not really a huge fan of sitcoms now. I think they kind of, like, are going down the drain, and all the new ones aren't that good. So it was a refresher to see this show based off of that, and they execute it perfectly. I actually, while I watched it, I forgot this is an MCU show. I actually thought I was watching a sitcom until some moments where it's leading into, like, oh, wait, I forgot. It is an MCU show. Like, there's actually crazy stuff happening around this sitcom perfect world stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that it loses some people there. For like me, I have a love and appreciation for 60s media, but I've never really watched the shows, more of a movies guy in that regard. So I don't want to say didn't appreciate it, because I appreciated it. I honestly appreciated the craft more, but that didn't hit me. What hit me more was the weird situations that they're putting these two great characters in. I love the fact that in the credits they're credited as Wanda and Vision, not Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen, which kind of leads into this whole idea of, like, the characters are stuck in this TV show, not the actors are playing these characters. Yeah, I love they got some great 50s and 60s songs that cracked me up. The Paul Bettany singing, it was so good. Agnes, clearly Agatha, Ag, and then Harkness, and us.
Yep.
Interesting, just interesting all around how she kept kind of like forcing herself into this first episode. We've seen from trailers that later she references the fact that she's in a TV show where she's like, okay, let's start from the top, and walks back out of the scene and then walks back in. Which makes me believe, partly, and we'll get to this in a second, is someone controlling this or is Wanda controlling this? But I think, what are your thoughts on the first episode completely in its own little bubble?
Its own little bubble. Well, what going off of what you said of the question of whether Wanda or someone else is controlling it, honestly, it goes back and forth for me because there's moments that indicate, especially from our original trailer review, our review for that, we were thinking it's definitely Wanda. She's controlling it, and Vision stuck in her world. But then when you watch the first episode, you kind of realize you're like, no, I think Wanda is actually like trapped in it from someone else too. Like she doesn't know what's going on. But then there's also some moments where it seems like, oh, she's breaking out of it. She knows like something's wrong. Like, so I feel like she's not completely controlling it, but she deep down she knows what's happening, but then she's reverted into her sitcom form where she loses her memory until something happens where she like gains it back. So I feel like it's a little half and half. There's an outside bigger force, but then also her affecting it too. So I think it's two heads together here. Maybe like we talked about before outside of the podcast, maybe she's doing this to hide from somebody.
Yeah.
That's what this world is created for. But yeah, there's definitely a million questions to be asked for here, and I think that's exactly what they were going. They wanted to make it very weird and strange and amazing. So the more questions that the audiences are asking, that's the better off it is for Marvel. And I think that makes it seem like they executed their plan more, because then that'll make the finale even better when you have all these questions to ask.
Oh, 100%. And just a quick thing, if anyone, I don't know if this is, I can't hear registering on my microphone, but just in case, for the first time in a week, a freight train has decided to go past my apartment. So if you hear a noise, that's what that is. I am so sorry. Yeah, I Marvel and Disney in particular, especially with The Mandalorian and now into this, has really tapped into that week-to-week water cool conversation mentality where they give you just enough each episode. Like the first episode, I realized why they released episode 1 and 2. Because if they just released episode 1, there would have been no real setup for the big season. People would have been so angry. Not angry, but they would have been like, wow, okay, this is boring. Whereas when you release it with episode 2, you get that 50s and 60s sitcom, but you still get those sprinklings of stuff. And we'll get into the second episode now. I liked the second episode a lot better than the first. I thought there were some great jokes. I mentioned this to you, the one joke where he goes, like, Al is a commie. Is a communist, and everyone laughed, is the most 60s joke ever. It's just simple mastication. And the guy's like, oh, I don't do that. Cracked me up too. It's so, they managed, they didn't put 2020 humor into a 60s show. They took 60s humor and tried to make it funny for 2020, which I liked a lot.
2021.
Yeah, whatever it is.
It would have been released 2020 when they were making it.
Yeah, I like how the board, the calendar, like clearly said, like I think it was either August or November when they're doing the heart thing in the first episode, and they cut away from it really fast. And I was like, that was supposed to line up with the premiere date.
Yep. Oh yeah, true. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, they cut away like for a second. You see, I can't remember if it's August or November. Like $10 says that was the premiere date, and then they went, crap.
But yeah, no, I definitely think the second episode was better, but I think that's just how the entire series is going to be, because it starts off the first episode just like almost like a normal sitcom and just a few teases, and then every episode is going to grow more and more out of that sitcom to real life MCU, and there's huge things happening in the background. So every episode I think is just going to get better and better and better as it goes, because it's just more information that's being revealed to you, because we still don't have much information even out of the second episode, but you definitely see more than the first one. So within the third, like you told me before, there's 9 episodes and they're being split up into 3 arcs, right? Like the first 3 is more of the sitcom and then the next 3, 4, 5, 6 is more of like them revealing stuff, and then the last 3 are just like the big like epic like climax of the show.
The way that Paul Bettany said it in an interview, I think with Fallon, was 1, 2, 3 is set up Act 1. 4, 5, 6 is where everything starts to fall apart. 7, 8, 9 is they basically know what's happening and now they have to combat it. Which makes sense, because if you the reason we originally thought it was 6 episodes because it would have been 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. Whereas this now makes sense that it's 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, and then boom, the last 3 episodes are kind of the finale in the modern day.
Yeah.
And you might be asking, why not the 2010s or 2020s for sitcoms? It's because I can't think of a good sitcom in the 2010s that isn't the exact same as the 2000s.
No. I mean, though, I think the 2000s is the last, like, sitcoms where they had, like, some that I enjoyed. Like, How I Met Your Mother I'm watching right now, that was in the 2000s. And those ones are, like, the last, like, good ones that I liked.
Yeah.
In the 2010s, there's really not one that was made in the 2010s where I'm like, oh, I love those, like, I love the older ones.
No, in the 2010s, you got Office, Modern Family. Parks and Rec may have been early 2010s.
I kind of think of those different than sitcoms because they're more mockumentary style. Like, it's different.
Well, the reason I bring them up is because the last episode is specifically going to be in the style of Modern Family Office, and we'll have cutaway interviews in which we find out more stuff about Wanda. But so in terms of the second episode, I know you had mentioned you like this. I know some people didn't like it online and thought it was cheesy. I did like the weird drunk vision on gum sort of thing with the very Hanna-Barbera I Dream of Jeannie cartoon of when it goes into a system like that. I thought that was a hoot and a half.
Yeah, no, I like that. I mean, like, those people are probably just like, they're just younger generations that never watched those shows. So obviously I understand why they don't like it or care for it. They're like, oh, this is cheesy. They don't have any further appreciation for that, and they just want to see your typical MCU, like all these big battle fights and all that, and you don't get that within the first couple episodes of the show. But that's, like I said before, just be patient because I'm sure the last 3 episodes is going to be crazy like that.
We'll get into this in a second. I was going to try to split it into like sections, but it all has to be kind of said at once. Paul Bettany also said that whoever the villain is an actor he's been dreaming of working with for years, and it's someone that no one expects, that they've apparently kept really on the down low. So I'm like, it's definitely going to be a big villain. It's definitely going to be some sort of next big villain. I don't know if this is just a setup for maybe they're a kind of hench villain for the main villain, because Marvel does that sometimes where they get like Kurt Russell to play Ego for just a movie, where he doesn't want to come back and do that forever, but he'd love to do that one movie. That being said...
Well, talk about what you told me about, like how in old sitcoms they name drop people but you never see them until next thing you know, then it's a huge actor playing them. I don't know if you want to discuss that.
Let's get into potential villains. Now, this show has kind of hinted at so many different villains, it's hard to say. Now, before we get into what's hinted in the show, a lot of people complained before its release that WandaVision was releasing a lot of TV promos. Now, I saw this online, I can't take credit for this, but what you realize is, over the TV promos, where it says streaming on Disney Plus next Friday, it slowly goes from streaming on Disney Plus to dreaming on Disney Plus. It's definitely dreaming. You can hear him say dreaming, and if you turn on the captions, which are made by Marvel, it says dreaming on Disney Plus Friday, or today at this point. Which leads us to believe in one of two people. Nightmare, potentially, but if it is Nightmare, I think he's just a henchman for Mephisto, who might be the bigger villain they're setting up for the entire series. We should get back to that. What Joey was referencing right there is Agatha Harkness keeps saying, my husband Ralph. Now, Ralph, we haven't seen him. She says, oh, my husband Ralph in the audience. I looked. No one is in the audience with her. She's sitting with the kooky lady Dottie or Beth or someone, the mean lady. I think I've done all the looking of who may Ralph be. I think it may be Cobalt Man, named Ralph. Genius scientist, experiments with cobalts, build his own version of the Iron Man suit. This leads me to believe two things. I think a big actor will come in like they do in sitcoms and reprise the role. I know they do this a lot, like in Friends, they name drop someone, and then when they show up, it's Brad Pitt, that sort of thing, and I think they're going for that kind of sitcom-y style. I think what might happen, and Joey, I talked to you about this, Cobalt Man shows up, maybe with a kind of suit of armor at the end, maybe not, or maybe he's kind of in development. I think that Agatha Harkness and Cobalt Man were both dragged in when they were trying to treat Wanda for something, and Wanda, in self-defense, whatever's doing this to her, dragged them in. You've got magic, you've got tech. I also think that when Cobalt Man shows up, he, of course, has an armor suit, which may lead into Armor Wars, which they just announced, whereas Rhodey is realizing that there's all these people with basically Iron Man suits that he's going to kind of start to control.
Mm-hmm. And I think that would be definitely be cool, because you'll see it dragging on to further MCU projects down the road, but also with the Agatha Hartman thing is that within the trailers you see she's also under the spell too, because she breaks out of, you see when she's in the car, she breaks out and she goes, "Who are you?" To Vision, and he goes, "But you're dead." And then you see another clip, goes, "You're the Avengers." So she's definitely confused, and she's definitely, like, I remember before we were thinking maybe she might be doing this to Wanda, but I don't think she is. She's definitely dragged into it with her. So yeah. I'm wondering if she was sent in after her to try to help her, but when she did so, like you said, either Wanda's self-defense dragged her in with her, or put the spell on her too, or whoever's doing this to Wanda did that to her too. Maybe like a spell, like whoever comes in.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that Wanda knew something was happening, someone was after her before she went into the sitcom world, because you keep on hearing some people trying to radio in, probably from S.W.O.R.D., saying, "Wanda, who's doing this to you? Who's doing this to you?" So I assume like she reached out to someone saying, someone's after me, something's happening, like I need help or something to them, or Nick Fury or whoever, and then in self-defense she made this world for her, and now she's seen little blips of like the real world trying to seek in, and that's what she's getting confused, and they're trying to reach in and reach to her, like, who's doing this to you, because she never told them who did that, or like at the end of the episode how she reversed everything. Yeah. So she definitely has control in this world. So it's definitely not someone just completely doing this to her. So I think she kind of did this to herself to protect her from something bigger.
There's also a chance that, it's just occurred to me right now, maybe the bubble popped up because you said, "Oh, the Avengers, are you here to save us?" There's a chance that something popped up. I know this happens a lot. There's a great episode of Batman the Animated Series where this happens, where to kind of get Batman to go away and shut up, the Mad Hatter and the Scarecrow, is that Scarecrow or Mad Hatter? Someone, I think it's the Mad Hatter, puts him in a dream state and then makes it so his parents are alive. So obviously he has no purpose to be Batman anymore. So I think there's a chance what happens is this bubble pops up and Wanda, as part of the Avengers, goes to investigate. And when she enters to shut her up and shut her down, whatever it is brings Vision back. And is like, oh, well, if she lives in this perfect life, she's not going to notice. She becomes too attached to it. Stuff starts to go wrong. And then she, thinking that this is basically her world now, is like, no, I got to save my world, gets rid of this stuff. I don't know. There's so many places to go. It's all speculation right now. I think we have seen... So the helicopter she picks up with the S.W.O.R.D. logo, by the way, is S.W.O.R.D., confirmed S.W.O.R.D., so excited about this. Helicopter she picks up has a S.W.O.R.D. logo. We see in one of the trailers a helicopter that looks the exact same with the S.W.O.R.D. logo crash into the bubble. So I think what we're going to find out is anything that hits this bubble turns into some weird 50s nonsense and lands.
Yeah, and that was also the only thing with color, too.
Yes, and I think that's where Monica Rambeau comes in as well, as they send her in, Agents of S.W.O.R.D., go in, save Wanda. She goes in, swoop, mind goes blank, blah, blah, blah. You go in, and now she doesn't remember who she is.
Is she the one that was in that episode?
Yeah, she's the friend who gets teleported into the cabinet.
Yeah, I was wondering, because I couldn't... Because that was the first time I seen her in her sitcom clothes instead of... Because in the trailer it shows her like in her present clothes, in her style. So that I couldn't tell if that was her or not. I couldn't recognize her. But then there was that one moment where she talked to Wanda and she kind of had that same memory thing with her. I'm like, that has to be her because she seems like she's not a part of that world either.
It
So I'm like, oh, this
definitely
has to be
is.
her.
Yeah, and I think what does she say? Let me Google for a second. When Wanda asks her name in the Rainbow, when Wanda asks her name in the episode, she says something really dumb. It's like something like Geraldine or something, fake name. Let me check.
Yeah, I don't know, but you could definitely tell. Because then I remember in the trailer when she like gets out, she was confused as hell. So and then she was with Sword. So I'm assuming that within that bubble, whenever you go in, you're just altered into the sitcom world. So the helicopter turned into a toy. When you go in, you fully get dressed up like you're in the 50s, 60s, whatever time period it is at the time, and then your memory kind of gets erased, like you've been part of that world your entire life, except you can't remember your past.
Yeah, I'm just so fascinated with this series when push comes to. I can't find it off the top of my head. I'm not gonna make it up, but it's something clearly fake and based on something that you see.
I think a big thing we should talk about, which at the like when it just like pops up, you think it's just like nothing. It's just your typical, like what they did in sitcoms. You know how they have how they have just like regular commercials, but within the show, each episode, right in the middle of the episode, the first and the second, they have just a commercial within the sitcom show, and the first one is showing a toaster and it's a Stark product, and you hear like the ticking and it seems kind of awkward, like what the hell is going on. And then the second show they had another commercial, and this one showed the Hydra logo, and you hear the ticking again. And so like we were talking about this before, and you said how maybe like each episode it's showing from events like life traumatic events from her past. So like each episode, like your earliest bad event. So with Stark, and Stark is what got her parents killed, and then the next one's Hydra, who took them over and made their powers, whatever.
Yeah, specifically Strucker, which I'll get into a second, but yeah. I think we're definitely right on that one. That'll be interesting to see. And then you had said, I haven't watched it yet, but you said they released the Legends episode, the Marvel Legends, where they kind of do recaps on the characters, and they definitely kind of lean into that here are the tragedies sort of thing. So I think that's what's happening. What leads me, another thing, interesting speculation, is that Strucker in the comics starts up AIM as an offshoot of Hydra to do kind of even more undercover science-y things. So, we're going to, huge spoiler right here, the Beekeeper at the end of episode 2. This confuses me because
didn't they have that in one of the trailers, the Beekeeper?
No. If they
I could have sworn I seen the Beekeeper before somewhere.
They have some sort of they have the beginning of the shot where like the two cans come out of the manhole cover, if I'm not mistaken, but you never see him, you never see the logo, you never see the full getup with the bees and everything. So it looks like a sword agent breaking in, and then they undo it. Except, infamously in the comics, AIM soldiers are kind of jokingly called malicious beekeepers. And in the show, Sword is a good guy, obviously. Swords are the good guys. That dude does not give off the vibe of, here, I'm coming to save you. Mm-hmm. He's surrounded by bees.
And in the dark, coming out of a sewage.
He's coming out of the sewer. He does the really creepy head whip. We specifically don't see his face, so I think he's going to be a big... Whoever it is going to be a reveal. You know what I mean? They're going to be like, who's the beekeeper? Yep. I don't know if that's going to be the leader of Sword, and maybe they are a good guy, if kind of a creepy good guy. I don't know. I kind of am leaning to maybe AIM has infiltrated Sword the way that Hydra infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D., and that maybe that will lead up to the big villain, which I'll talk about now. We had been, if you listen to our previous stuff, we'd been so focused on what someone was doing to Wanda that it never really occurred to us that someone might be actually trying to get Vision back. There is a chance that this is AIM, specifically MODOK, trying, because they've been rumors about MODOK coming in the MCU for about a year now. There is a chance that this is MODOK teaming up with someone like Mephisto so that Mephisto can get the children, and MODOK can get Vision in Vision's brain.
Well, because the entire thing behind AIM, they were trying to make these powerful beings and this technology so that they could be like more powerful and take over all the governments.
Yeah, and I think I have a sneaking suspicion we'll have a Mandarin situation where it will reveal that the AIM we saw in the movie isn't the real AIM. Like, there's someone who just, like, the Mandarin heard the title, so he picked it up. I think there's a chance they'll be like, oh, that was an offshoot ran by a nut job. We're the real AIM, we're the real Advanced Idea Mechanics. I hope we get a MODOK. I love MODOK. Weird character. Would love to see in live action. I would love a Mephisto. We'll talk about this now. I keep saying that, but I just have so many thoughts. In the Loki trailer, they are standing in front of what looks to be a stained glass window, but instead of having like God or Christ on it, it has a weird horned figure. There's a chance they're just setting up all this stuff to show that Mephisto is the big bad behind this, which I know it's super controversial, but in the comics, Mephisto is the one who undoes the fact that Peter Parker's identity is revealed, which people hated, but that's a huge story plot point, and we know that Peter Parker's identity has been revealed, and we have way too much stuff to go, oh, Mephisto's off the table. So I wonder if Mephisto will be the big bad or Mephisto and some godlike beings will be the kind of overarching big bad for the MCU for a while.
Mm-hmm. That'd be interesting.
It would be really, because they can't really defeat him. I mean, you can, but not really, because he's like basically a god. So I'm interested to see, will they have him throw people? Maybe he'll create situations like Galactus or Doctor Doom, give them extra powers to kind of be his minions for a while. I don't know.
Well, that's why maybe if he is like so powerful and he's just like kind of in the background pulling the strings, it gives a chance to have more villains within this. So maybe they do have a tease at MODOK, and he has a little hand in this show. And then they also do have Nightmare, who's also another hand in the show that leads up to Doctor Strange, because they say how this series heavily ties straight into Doctor Strange. So there is a possibility that there could be multiple people having impact on this show, and because there are so many different opportunities that could be happening within the villains. So maybe they do go down the path that is only one person, and there's just different scenarios where they could have more than one, or they actually do have a little bit more than one, just to further go into the rest of the MCU, how those villains branch out into their own bigger things.
And I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head here, which is they've specifically said there's a reason this isn't a movie, and I think one of the reasons is they would have too many villains for a movie. Someone on the internet noticed if you go to like a minute 3:23, I think, in episode 2, in the middle of there's literally, and I've checked, it's about 1 or 2 frames when animated Vision goes through the floor in the 70s theme song of episode 2. There is the Grim Reaper's helmet between the floorboards. Grim Reaper in the comics is a famous Hydra villain who sometimes works for AIM, is kind of a mercenary, infamously in the comics kills Vision's daughter, and has a long history with both Vision because his brother is Wonder Man, who in the original comics, Vision is based on Wonder Man. That was a lot in a second. But it's definitely, I mean, you saw it, dude. It's definitely his helmet.
Yeah, definitely. Like, you showed me the picture of the actual person and the cartoon drawing in the episode. Like, it's exactly the same.
There's no way around it. People have said it's Galactus. It's not. It's clear. It's got the 4 things coming off of the helmet. I think that the Grim Reaper will come. The Reaper will come in at some point as like almost maybe a first villain, maybe in like episodes 5 or 6, as the setup to the next villain, maybe episodes 7, and then it will all be revealed that everyone is working for whoever the big villain is, 8, 9.
Well, even going off that, so that's a possibility, and I think that would be something really cool that they do. But maybe they even go down the route where they're teasing villains that aren't actually going to be villains in the show, just like how they did in past movies, especially like the Mandarin in Iron Man 3, how that wasn't actually the villain, but now it's going to be later in the MCU, the real Mandarin's coming. So you know how you have the Beekeeper coming out in the end of episode 2, but maybe just to tease like, oh, it's AIM and maybe MODOK's behind this. But what happens if it is just a sword agent and they make it seem like he's like kind of scary and he found them, and then because you see Wanda get scared and she goes no, and then she reverses everything and it goes back to like 30 seconds before when they're happy, and then that beekeeper thing never happens. So it makes you think, it makes it come across like, oh, he's the bad guy, that's part of AIM and he's the one doing all this to them. But what happens if they want you to think that, and it's another one of those things where, oh, he's actually a good guy in Sword, and Wanda's just scared of him because she knows that he is there to get her out of this world, but she doesn't want to leave. So that's why she reverses it, so she could stay in this happy life with Vision, even though he's actually a good guy. It just makes him seem like a bad guy because Wanda doesn't want to leave.
And I do think, and that kind of leads into a bigger thing, what that episode is about is, the reason why I definitely think it's Mephisto and not someone's like, oh no, it's just Nightmare. I think it's Mephisto. Here's why. The entire episode, from the beginning, everyone is chanting for the children, for the children. I think the goal is, and this might be AIM's goal as well, they want Wanda to give birth to superpowered, crazy, weaponized children that they can then mold and create in this false reality. I think that the reason that Wanda and Vision have been captured specifically is because they want to create Speed and Wiccan. They want to create these insanely powerful mutants, for lack of a better word right now. We don't know if that's going to be the case. They want to create these insanely powerful individuals and kind of train them from birth. And I think that's what the entire plot of the show is going to be.
Well, as you've seen, she just got 3 months pregnant out of nowhere within seconds, and they just acted like nothing happened. They look at the stomach and they're just like, this is happening. So it's like, it's not like one of those where like, well, what the hell just happened? It's kind of just seems normal. So it's definitely someone's playing around with what's happening. So it seems like they just had, they tried to have a baby 3 months ago, and they've been living like that for a long time now,
yeah,
instead of just like happened within seconds.
And it actually just occurred to me, I think that might be Wanda's doing, because she says, we don't see that her stomach is big, and she goes, we're going to need more popcorn for the children, and then gets up. Obviously, she knows she's pregnant, and then Vision is like, whoa, Wanda, you're huge. And I really think that maybe Wanda that kind of leads in the idea of that, even though Wanda might not have created this world, she has a lot of manipulative power in it and might be manipulated. Maybe someone who isn't as powerful as her is manipulating her to do all this. And I think when push comes to shove, especially because all the trailers have been about the kids, and I honestly thought the kids would be a way later edition. I thought the kids would be 3 or 4 episodes in. And it's like, episode 2. I think that this TV show is going to be about, we need to raise and get those kids, and they need to be powerful, and we need to weaponize them, whoever the villain is.
Mm-hmm. Which, that makes me seem like, well, you said Mephisto, but then also that could also be AIM's doing too. So that's still, but the chanting with the "We Are the Children" could lead down more of your speculations, but then also with AIM always trying to make these super powerful beings, like that's how they created MODOK, was trying to do that because they want to take over all the governments. So, which it might be the two of them teaming up. And the last thing I'll say about this is, so in this episode, she's like 3 months pregnant. We know in the next episode she's gonna give birth, because if you look at the costumes, 80s they're gonna be like kids, toddlers, and then we've seen a bunch of stuff from the 90s episode, and the things we've seen from the 90s episode is Halloween, Vision trick-or-treating, and it never occurred to me, why would he be trick-or-treating? Because he has like 8 and 10-year-old kids. And I think by the time we get to the finale, they'll be the kind of 15, 17-year-old selves that we see in the comics, and that's where we're going to go from there. Mm-hmm. And I think the Halloween episode is the episode where he kind of breaks out of the sitcom world and realizes, like, this isn't the real world. Because within the trailers, when he turns into his real Vision self and flying and showing off like what he really looks like in public, it's while kids are trick-or-treating.
Yeah, I have
he flies above. So I think it's within that episode is when things really start breaking out.
I have a feeling that's either the very end of episode 5 or the beginning of episode 6, if I had to guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but
also I don't think we touched on this. What about the ending of episode 1, where it breaks out of the credits roll for the sitcom and someone's watching it?
Yeah, that boggles me, and I don't want to do crazy speculation, but the idea was that they're stuck in a sitcom, right? But now the idea is that not only are they stuck in a sitcom, but someone's monitoring the sitcom, which is why I think Sword might actually be secretly evil or something, because they're not seeing it as like a world. They're seeing it as a TV show. They're seeing it the way we're seeing it. So I'm like, what? Wow.
It gives me the vibes like the last season of Legends of Tomorrow. It's giving me those vibes. How I forget what they're called now. Those three sisters with whatever with all those.
I didn't actually watch the last season of Legends of Tomorrow. It's on my list.
I forget the name of those three. They're basically like almost like they're immortal. They're three ladies when they're together. They each have like a piece of something. I forget what it's called now. But when they're all together, they could basically alter reality to whatever they want it to be. And within that, they had the legends all in different sitcoms, and they have this room where they have all the sitcoms being monitored. They're basically the showrunners of all their sitcoms, and they're monitoring them. So that's what it like reminded me of. They're basically gods, and they altered reality where they have their real world where they're controlling, and then the legends are stuck in a sitcom that the real world watches.
Is that are they just the Fates?
The Fates, yes, that's what they're called, the Fates.
Yeah, I think this ironically this reminds me of it reminds me of getting stuck in a dream is actually a quite common thing. People are saying it's weird and crazy. I mean, Batman's done it, Batman animated series have done it, Batman comic books have done it, DuckTales did it, Legends of Tomorrow did it. You know, it goes back for a while.
DuckTales.
What was I going to say? Rampant speculation at this point. I have a feeling that in the next 2 weeks we'll get some more clarity, but I think they're just going to tease the heck. I think at the end of every episode they're just going to be like, here's a little more information that's vague enough that it doesn't confirm anything.
Then it just makes you're just like ripping your hair out for a week waiting for the next episode.
That's actually, I went and got a haircut today, and that is why. I was making sure I didn't rip my hair out. I was double checking. Long story short, I'm insanely excited for this. I think that we're going to have some really, really, really interesting stuff as the series progresses. I think Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen really, especially, I know people love Vision and he's a great character in the comics, but I've been more excited for a Wanda Scarlet Witch thing for a while. I'm so happy she's getting some character development. I'm so happy part of my brain while I was watching this, I really liked her being stuck in these weird 60s housewife tropes, because I was like, she could destroy the universe, and she's worrying about how to drink tea. Like when she's like properly putting the ice cubes in her drink, I was like, she could kill you all.
Oh, that's another thing we forgot to touch upon. Another reason why we think that she actually has some control, whether it's her self-conscious, or she actually knows she's doing this, which I think she doesn't know she's doing it, but she actually is both moments within the first episode and the second episode, whenever a character kind of confronts them, kind of nagging at them, knowing something's up, Vision's boss at their dinner party, she's asking, nagging at them, trying to find the questions of their backstories, which they have no memory of. They have no idea, where they got married, where they're from, all that. But then he's nagging at them, then it kind of breaks out of the sitcom, and then next thing you know, he starts choking on a piece of steak. And then in the second episode, with the lady that basically runs the neighborhood, when she's kind of confronting Wanda, saying she knows something's wrong up with Wanda and Vision. The next thing you know, her glass breaks and she cuts her hand. So I think I don't know if Wanda purposely doing this or something within her self-conscious, like a self-defense thing that she doesn't know she's actually doing, is kind of attacking the people that are kind of breaking her out of this world.
And the thing of note is, after every occurrence happens, they treat it like it didn't happen. The lady is like, how do you get bloodstains? The lady, we say it's a cut. That is an open wound. I've got cut in the hand, and if you have a cut that big, that is, so she really got hurt, and the guy was choking and dying. And both of them afterwards were like, ha ha ha, see you later. So
even the wife while it was happening, he's definitely dying, and she's still smiling and laughing, ha ha, you can knock it off, when it's obvious that he's dying.
And she's yelling, "Stop it." I do think it's interesting that they never cut to her looking at the guy. They actually keep cutting between her saying "stop it" and Wanda. I wonder if she's like yelling at Wanda to stop it. This leads into the fact that Wanda might have been like responsible for both of these, whether on purpose or by accident, and the fact that Wanda breaks out of that weird kind of ha 50s thing when she's choking and goes like "Vision," and this like help him in like a very Wanda that we know MCU kind of way. So I'm like, interesting. I have a sneaking suspicion that that's kind of going to be part of the kind of future of the show is Wanda maybe inflicting, not on purpose, but maybe by accident, kind of inflicting pain on the people who might hurt her reality.
Yep, exactly.
I can't think of anything else that hasn't been said by someone else. Well, we got Cobalt Man, we mentioned Grim Reaper, we mentioned Mephisto, we mentioned MODOK. We have mentioned everything that I've got. Do you got anything else before we wrap up?
No, I think that's pretty much it for me. I said most of everything I need to say, I think.
I think we should wrap this up as 50s and 60s radio commenters to stick with the time period.
And tune in next week if you want to see us spaz out more about what's going to happen in episode 4 and realize that everything that we said in this episode is definitely not going to happen and we are wrong.
Yes, do that. And if you want to, as this new year comes up and as we start to get back together, let us know on Twitter or in the comments or wherever you find, do you want us to start doing more video stuff where you see our faces? Let us know. Also, as we close out, make sure that you check us out on all those newfangled social media platforms, including Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, at TheBlipPod, all one word. You can send us an email at theblippod@gmail.com if you would like. It's the 70s. Well, yeah, and then you can, if you want to follow Joey on TikTok, that would be absolutely flowery, baby.
Gnarly, man.
Oh, it's the 80s. Yeah.
Well, I don't know, Doc. Making this podcast has been insanely heavy. Oh my God. Okay. Well, we're gonna end this. Oh my God, we're gonna end this podcast right now. Thanks, guys, for checking in. Check Joey out on TikTok and oh man, wow.
I'm honestly surprised we made it to the 80s, considering that you were a communist back in the 60s.
I was a communist the whole time. And now as we enter the 90s, we're all going to have really weird hairstyles and then end for laugh track. Okay. Check us out on everything. Give us a follow, give us a like, give us a review if you're listening to this on any podcast services. Give us a subscribe if you're listening to this on YouTube. Thanks so much, guys, for sticking around to the end. We hope to see you later. As always, stay nerdy.
And positive.
And make sure that you, like Wanda, are quarantining in a little self-contained and crazy bubble. Have a nice day. 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 Have a nice day.